Hi! Today, I'm going to talk to you about the art of negotiation, about an essential skill in leadership. When it comes to executive decision making in many organizations, negotiation is often misunderstood as a competition where one side has to win and the other has to lose. However, effective negotiation isn't just about defeating someone else. It's about understanding interests, protecting relationships, creating options, and reaching agreements that can actually be implemented. For executive leaders, negotiation isn't just an occasional skill used during big contracts, functions, or financial decisions. Negotiation is a constant part of our daily lives. Leaders negotiate with their dedicated employees, families, boards of directors, local community partners, suppliers, and various other stakeholders. Every single effective leader in a professional setting needs to bring every person around them into total alignment in order to successfully navigate and manage complex interpersonal conflicts, carefully handle various expectations, effectively persuade others, and openly share their vision. The process of negotiation is actively occurring even when one of the most important ideas about organizational competence completely fails to recognize negotiation as a fundamental and essential leadership capability. When leaders choose to avoid these difficult conversations, the underlying problems simply do not disappear on their own. More often than not, they become significantly larger in scale and considerably more expensive. In early childhood education, this can affect professional responsibility in people, trust, families, compliance with rules, enrollment, and the quality of services offered to children. That's why it's extremely important to create this environment, follow the rules, and be a good leader. A solid negotiation process starts with preparation. Before entering any negotiation, leaders need to understand their goals, their negotiable points, their alternatives to a negotiated agreement, and the interests of the other party. This is known as the BATNA, Best Alternative to a Negotiated Agreement. Knowing your BATNA helps leaders negotiate with clarity because they know what they can accept and what they shouldn't accept. This alternative is extremely helpful in meeting expectations. For example, as a leader at the school where I work, Prime ABC, the preschool organization here in Seattle, negotiation became essential during the organization's transition period since it was about to have new leadership. The entire enrollment process, the overall visual and aesthetic aspect for the systems, ensuring full compliance with all state and local regulations, and carefully reviewing the complex negotiations the previous director had made, who, by the way, had unfortunately failed to introduce any meaningful innovation or progress to the school for many years, and her eventual retirement left a significant amount of problems for this new succession, or rather, this challenging new job offer the school is now presenting to the public. So the new leader needs to know absolutely everything. What was happening before, how they're going to run the school, what the expectations are, and have a super clear vision so as not to negatively impact the teachers, the classroom routines, personal trust, and the school's ability to consistently serve families. Some of these members and staff also have expectations and their own points of view. They also need to manage things like punctuality, professional conduct, and responsibilities within the classroom. At the same time, that leader needs to modernize the community's connection with families through social media and a digital presence to update the entire database. There needs to be a process to improve enrollment, get involved with people who already have a history here, develop leadership habits, and make a complete organizational change, which is what this school needs to improve. The school already had too many problems with the previous principal. The first negotiation principle that applies in this situation is one of the Harvard negotiation principles. Separate the person from the problem. This principle is especially important in leadership because organizational problems often become personal. When a leader questions old practices, other people may feel attacked. When a leader raises concerns about professional responsibilities, staff may feel judged. When a leader asks for change, people can get defensive because the problem becomes connected to their identity, history, or sense of ownership. At the school where I was, at Prime ABC, the goal was not to attack the administrator for the work she had done before, nor to blame her individually or the teachers. The goal was to identify the organizational systems that were no longer working by separating the person from the problem. The conversation could focus on what the school needed: clear policies, greater professional accountability, better communication, and updated strategies for better enrollment, for better compliance. This made it possible to protect relationships while addressing serious concerns. The second Harvard principle is negotiating interests, not positions. A position is a person saying what they want. An interest is the deeper reason behind the position. For example, staff members might say, "I don't want that rule anymore." That's a position, it's a deeper interest. I'm afraid, I feel controlled, I'm confused, I'm worried about punishment, about not being supported. So that's when the board might say, we need to raise tuition, we need a position, we need the organization to become financially stable, to keep serving families and children. We need to explain the situations that are going to happen so that these people let go of those kinds of concerns. In the Prime ABC case, one belief was that the school should continue operating in a familiar, traditional way. Another belief was that the school needed significant changes. If those beliefs had been treated as opposites, the conversation could have turned into a conflict, win or lose. However, when deeper interests were examined, common ground emerged. Everyone wanted the school to survive. Everyone wanted the children to be safe. Everyone wanted families to trust the program. Everyone wanted the staff to understand the expectations. These shared interests created a foundation for win-win negotiation. The third Harvard principle is developing criteria that a good solution must meet. This is incredibly important to remember because leaders really shouldn't hastily jump into proposing solutions before clearly defining and establishing exactly what success will look like. In the case of Prime ABC, a good solution should meet certain criteria. It should protect the children, support the teachers, meet the expectations of the program and licensing requirements, improve enrollment, and respect the school's history while preparing for the future. Furthermore, it should also be sufficiently practical and realistic for both the board and the staff members to be able to successfully execute and put into practice the various strategic solutions that are currently being proposed. A new development for the Code of Conduct manual, a clear manual, clear expectations, attendance and punctuality support, responsibilities within the classroom, professional conduct, compliance with school requirements and standards, and the documents that must be considered in a school to meet licensing requirements. When it comes to clear expectations, this plays a huge foundational role. The leader must communicate the new expectations clearly to the staff and the entire organization. They must be completely clear. Harvard's fourth principle is to create multiple options before choosing a final solution. In negotiations, leaders often make the mistake of presenting only one solution and expecting everyone to accept it. However, having multiple options creates flexibility and reduces resistance. At Prime ABC, the organization could consider several options: immediate implementation of policies, gradual support for staff, transition planning led by the boards, digital enrollment strategies, professional development, or a combination of these strategies. The strongest approach wasn't a single action, it was a phased response. This connects directly with win-win negotiation. A win-win agreement isn't weak. It's not about giving up what matters. It's about finding a solution that meets the most important interests of all parties. For the board of directors, the benefit was a stronger and more sustainable organizational structure. For the teachers, the benefit was having clearer expectations and more intentional support for families. The benefit was a more stable school, more responsive to the children, resulting in a much safer and more predictable learning environment for the organization, a benefit that looked toward the future. Obviously, much more solid. An important negotiation technique is tactical empathy. Tactical empathy means recognizing other people's perspectives and naming them in a way that builds trust and leadership. Now, this certainly does not mean simply agreeing with every single thing and everyone. It means demonstrating genuine concern and ensuring that people truly feel they have been heard. For example, when staff members are asked to follow new expectations, a leader might say, "Do you understand that this changes how we feel?" Don't feel overwhelmed because the school has operated differently for many years. This phrase can change other people's attitudes, and they may feel seen and supported. Tactical empathy is especially important when negotiating organizational change. People rarely resist change just because they dislike the process. Many times, they resist because they're afraid of losing control. Comfort, identity, security. A leader who ignores these feelings can create resistance. A leader who acknowledges this can build trust. During the transition at Prime ABC, empathy was necessary because the school was moving from informal habits to formal ones. Professional responsibility. Another important lesson from the modules, saying no. An emphatic no doesn't always end in negotiation. Many times, it reveals hidden interests. In the example from the video about negotiating for pumpkins, the seller didn't want to sell the pumpkins because she needed the seeds for the next year. Once those specific interests were fully recognized, the buyer could then return to the marketplace again next year to purchase even more additional inventory. When you understand that there really is a no, in this lesson, leadership plays a strong role when someone says no, because a leader shouldn't immediately assume resistance or bad intentions. A better question is, what concern is behind that no? In the specific case of Prime ABC, the former owner's deep-seated uncertainties and hesitations regarding social media platforms reflected a genuine fear of public exposure, a significant lack of familiarity with modern technology, or a major concern about managing the online community in a truly professional way. These were the core concerns during the intense negotiations with the people who worked there, which ultimately led to much deeper discussions. But to address this properly, it was absolutely necessary to thoroughly understand and implement the right solutions to these complex problems. A strong negotiator also understands that walking away from a deal can be better than accepting a bad one. This is important for executive leadership because pressure can lead leaders to accept weak deals, not just to avoid conflict. However, a bad deal can damage trust, create confusion, or fail during implementation in early childhood education. Accepting vague expectations about people's responsibilities wouldn't be enough in a solid agreement. An agreement needs to be clear, practical, connected, and followed up on. A negotiation doesn't end when people reach a verbal agreement. It ends when the agreement is implemented and monitored. At Prime ABC, the employee handbook and the digital communication strategy required follow-up. The staff needed training, expectations needed reminders, and the board needed to monitor the process and progress. Families needed much clearer communication. Even a good negotiation can't just stay as a conversation. Executive leaders also need to understand the role of communication and negotiation. Communication is more than just speaking clearly. It encompasses various elements such as the specific tone of your voice, the precise timing of your delivery, and the nuances of your body language. It also involves active listening skills, the professional ability to clearly present a complex problem, and the essential capacity to articulate that problem in a comprehensive way so that every person in the room can fully understand the situation. If a leader communicates with blame, people get defensive. When a leader effectively communicates their vision with absolute clarity and respect, team members and employees are much more likely to collaborate to resolve these complex challenges. Furthermore, they must ensure these efforts are deeply integrated with the overall organizational health. Negotiation also creates a competitive advantage. For Prime ABC, the competitive advantage isn't just that the school offers preschool services. Many organizations offer preschool services. Prime ABC's advantage may come from its ability to combine experiences in Seattle, in the preschool program, bilingual engagement with families, teacher leadership, cultural practice, perspective, experience, and classroom practice. When these strengths are communicated clearly, the organization becomes much more distinctive in the early education market. That's why negotiation is also connected to market positioning. A school that negotiates well with staff, families, the board of directors, and community partners can adapt much faster and solve problems before a crisis hits. They can build trust with families, create partnerships, and strengthen their reputation. On the other hand, if the school avoids negotiation, it can get stuck in old practices, lose families, and suffer from cultural and organizational weakness. From my perspective, the components that influence negotiation for executive leadership are preparation, communication, interest-based foundations, tactical empathy, clear criteria, multiple options, follow-up, preparation, and the leader's clarity. Interest-based communication prevents a conversation from becoming personal. Practicing tactical empathy effectively builds a foundation of trust, while establishing very clear criteria helps to define success. Offering multiple different options will create much more flexibility, and consistent follow-up is what turns a simple agreement into real, decisive action. For my personal art of negotiation, the most important lesson is that negotiation must protect both the mission and the relationship. As an educator and leader, the goal is not to dominate teachers, families, or board members. The goal is to align the people who are around the children and the organization and whom the organization needs. In early childhood education, this is important because leadership decisions directly affect children's safety, emotional stability, families' trust, and teacher performance. A final example from Prime ABC illustrates the point when the organization began to discuss greater professional responsibility among the staff for an issue that could have been presented as a complaint against the teachers. Instead, the stronger leadership approach was to present it as a shared responsibility to protect the children, support the families, and strengthen the school. By choosing to frame the specific issue in this way, it ensured that the entire discussion became significantly more professional and structurally robust, and far less focused on personal grievances. It also made the recommendation much more persuasive because it connected professional responsibility with the mission and with the organization. To bring everything together in a final conclusion, negotiation is not simply a fundamental business technique, it is an essential daily leadership practice, a transformative process that turns conflict into clarity, shifts resistance into open dialogue, and evolves rigid positions into mutually beneficial and shared long-term solutions. Effective negotiation requires preparation, empathy, strategies, courage, and follow-up. A leader is someone who can negotiate well, protect relationships while making tough decisions. At Prime ABC, negotiation is essential for organizational renewal. It can help the members of the board of directors, dedicated teaching staff, families of the students, and community partners to work together to align themselves around the school. And this aligns with the professional responsibility that everyone should have and the visibility that must be present. The most important long-term aspect of being bilingual is helping the organization stay true to its mission and the art of negotiation, the art of leadership. It teaches leaders to listen, to persuade, to clarify, to take action. When leaders negotiate with integrity and purpose, they reach agreements and build much healthier organizations. Thank you.